Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. Thanks for being here. In this episode, I'm going to be breaking down one of my most asked YouTube subscriber questions, and that is, Matt, I'm hunting a brand new elk area this year. Where do I even start? Where do I begin? And I'm going to be answering this based on my 34 years of elk hunting experience, all the failures that have brought us to the point now where we consistently find elk and we are able to eliminate a lot of bad country right off the bat. And that's really where all of it starts for me when I'm trying to look at a new area and break it down. The very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out in my area, right? I'm going to look at that unit as a whole, and I'm going to turn on my trails and roads, and I'm going to look at where all the hunter access is, right? Where do all those roads and trails converge or cut through? And what I'm looking for there are the areas, the biggest areas that are going to give me the most huntable area with the least amount of hunter access, right? So if our whole mountain up here is covered in roads and trails, when I bring that up, it just looks like a spider web up there, right? Of purple roads and trail systems. And so what I'm looking for in that spider web are where are the biggest gaps, right? Where are the biggest holes? And there's only a couple of them in our range. And so when I'm looking, I'm gravitating towards those areas first, right off the bat. And then I'm going to blow them up and I'll go from there. Now, when we talk about access, a lot of times we're just thinking about those roads and trails and things of that nature. But for us, a huge piece of the puzzle, and this is a huge secret that a lot of folks, I think, gatekeep, successful hunters gatekeep. A lot of hunters don't even think about this. But what we're looking for is the access and the terrain that allows us to get into the country, those pockets of non-pressured, not accessible areas. And we're also looking for how hard is it to get into some of those places, right? Which spot is the hardest to get into, right? So that could be, distance, obviously. That's usually how guys talk about this, get remote, go beyond where the people go, get beyond, used to be a mile. Now people are recommending, go beyond 2 miles. And that's one way of looking at it, right? That mileage piece. But a whole nother piece of the game is, and a part of this puzzle that really has become important to us, is what is the barrier to entry for hunters, right? How nasty is it to get into? Can you take an ATV in there on some road? Too easy, right? Can you just kind of hike in and stroll over some rolling terrain? Too easy, right? It's going to allow more people access into that area. So for us, a lot of times we're trying to find something that is steep and rugged, and where most guys look at it and they're like, nope, really doesn't look appealing to me to go do that, right? I don't want to walk in there and waste all that energy and not know what I'm going to find on the other side of that. And that's perfect because we want to eliminate those people. And it really does eliminate, I think, probably more than 95% of elk hunters. That eliminates them. And we've seen it firsthand. You might be shaking your head and saying, no, I'm tough and I'm going to go wherever I want to go hunt elk. Good. I hope that's your mentality because you're going to get into more elk. But a lot of guys say that on face value and it's ego talking. And when the rubber meets the road, we walk out with elk out of places and we're a little bit nervous about going to the truck maybe because they're going to see us packing out and then they're going to know that there's elk in there. And we get back to the road and they're like, man, you guys went in there? Well, we heard elk bugling back in there, but we didn't want to go back into that nasty stuff. And that is one of the biggest secrets to our success in breaking down an area, a new area, and trying to get away from hunters. How hard is it? What's the cost? What do we have to pay? Is it hiking an hour up through something steep and nasty and rugged? And maybe we got to weave our way into some cliffy stuff to be able to drop down into some drainages where the elk haven't been pressured? Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. So when you narrow down that access, also be looking for what kind of barrier to entry near places that are accessible for you to get to. And that doesn't mean going 2 miles and then having to do that, right? Sometimes those places are right off of the road. Now, after we've determined that, after we're narrowing down how easy it is for somebody to get in there, both because of trails and roads and what the terrain barriers are like, what that cost of entry is, then we want to actually look at the specific terrain within there and see what that offers elk. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations in Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. It's not about us anymore. What does it offer the elk? So a lot of times that is also beneficial to zoom out a little bit, right? You want to look at that range, look at all those drainages, and we're trying to pick places that have the most elk needs, right? And what is the number one elk priority in just about any country? It's security, it's safety, it's protection, right? It's having options to escape, lots of escape routes, right? And so we're looking for a lot of those drainages or drainages that have a lot of fingers coming down off them. So when you zoom out, that mountain range doesn't just look green to you. It's not all just a sea of trees, but where are those dark shadowy areas? Where are those fingers dropping down in off of those ridges? Those are the sexy places for us, right? We know that that is going to offer more security to an elk than just a flat timber spot. Now, for the guys who say, well, I run into elk all the time in flat or rolling country. True, 100%. However, I want to hunt elk that are the most elky, that are, stand the highest odds of being called to, or are going to act the most like elk, not pressured elk. There's a big difference there for me. There's a big distinction in the two of those, right? It's not just elk. I don't really care about elk. A lot of mountain ranges are covered in elk, but they don't all act the same. The ones that are surrounded by trails and roads, those ones tend to talk at night and not during the day. They're a lot harder elk to call in if that's the tool that you're trying to use. Even if you're trying to pattern those elk, those flat sections of mountain that we have up here, they might have great food. They might have great water. There might be a lot of deadfall around, so those elk have good bedding areas and dark timber that they can escape into. But they're not as appealing to me as a hunter because those elk aren't as patternable in those types of terrain features, right? Where it's just flat and they could just kind of wander anywhere. Those elk tend to be more nomadic to me. They're traveling, they're feeding, they're drinking, they end up, picking a dark patch and they just end up where they end up. And I think that's one of the reasons why they don't vocalize as much is because, they don't feel as secure. Secure elk talk more. So we tend to prioritize looking for security pockets where it's easier to pattern those elk. Clear distinction from where they're going to feed to where they're going to go bed with distinct transition zones in between. Those are the areas that we love to key in on. So that would be the next thing beyond security. We're going to be looking for feed. Is there a balance here? It's not just all dark timber, right? Or just all nastiness and just one cut after another and just all solid timber. Is there some broken areas in there? Are there broken areas with parks and meadows and maybe a creek in the bottom? Areas where those elk can break out and feed at night, where they feel safe, right? And then balancing that out with being able to get into those security areas, right? And then you're going to start to pattern those elk in there and know that they're going to go from feeding at night and then they're going to transition up into bedding in the morning. And the transition zones, especially early season for us, is the number one way that we hunt elk. And we'll get into that in more questions. I've made a list of subscriber questions, and that is one of the biggest topics as well. So we'll get into that soon. So stay tuned for that next video coming out about that. And I have other long form educational structured scripted videos that talk about transition zones in depth. But that is the primary way that we're going to try to find those elk in a new area in the beginning when we're trying to figure it out. We haven't been there before. We don't know what their pattern is. We don't know if they're going to be talking or not, but we can bank on the fact that if there's some really secure looking pockets and there's feed nearby, that they're going to feed at night, they're going to transition through, and they're going to bed up in there somewhere. And that really narrows down that country for us. So I hope that's helped you guys out. Try to narrow down a new area from scratch. Those are the primary things that we're looking at. And we can get into technique of how we're going to hunt those areas, but those are absolutely the steps that we take when we're going to first open up that map in a new area. And then, of course, once we were in there, we'd be looking for all the traditional good stuff, right? Whether there's all kinds of fresh sign, your poops, your rubs, is there recent feed in there? Are there lots of tracks? Can we narrow down any kind of trail usage, right? All of those good things. And then we could also further break down that terrain into micro features like, are they using saddles as they transition from the feed to bed, or are they utilizing benches for travel or bedding areas, and all those things that I've got long form videos on, and we'll get into more in these simple question and answer type videos here. But I just wanted you to be able to get started breaking down your area with maybe a different perspective than you've heard other folks talk about. We're not gatekeeping information here. We're sharing what we do and what has made us successful year in and year out, finding and killing elk consistently. Now, if this video made you realize you might need a better plan this season, I offer an elk hunt plan audit service where once you purchase that audit, I'll send you a detailed questionnaire where you're going to fill out all the details about your area. You're going to send me your maps or screenshots of your area. I'm going to break that down and get you a 30+ page report on your area, including biologist information and all kinds of goodies that you may have overlooked in there in your planning. And then we're going to hop on a call. I'm going to further answer any questions or clarify any points from that report. You can find that at backboneunlimited.com, along with my elk hunting ebook series, which is a great place for everybody to start and boost their knowledge of elk behavior and breaking down terrain further, and even getting into the more tactical setups that we use and teach in our elk camps. And then, I'd love to have you join me on Team Backbone. That's a place where you have more access to me on a daily basis. I try to post in there as much as I can, and where I have posted a lot of my longer form written pieces of content for you to use in your build-up and preparation for season. And we just have a lot of other team members in there that are all on the same page, all just trying to learn as much as we can, and talking about all kinds of topics, both related to Western hunting and life in general. We all struggle with all kinds of things, so nothing is unlimited in there, and that's where Backbone Unlimited comes from. That name, I wanted it to stand for a lot of different things, not just hunting, but also a lot of the life stuff that we can dig into and is all related and intertwined with everything that we do as hunters and as people, right? And then beyond that, if you are struggling with preparation, I have been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years. And so that is a huge wheelhouse for me, where I offer training plans and nutrition programs for hunters, both preseason buildup and in-season training and nutrition on your hunt. So reach out to me if any of those are of interest to you. I'd be glad to get you started. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have questions that you'd like me to answer in one of the next videos, I'd love for you to leave me a comment. I read and respond to all of them. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.